couple with a brick, brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
We are DNVR, and we are live from Studio A here at the DNVR bar. The A stands for another one. And another two, actually. Two more head coaching interviews for the Denver Broncos today. Jonathan Gannon and Jerod Mayo. One already underway, still going?
Done, okay. Jerod Mayo, check off.
They're on their way to Philadelphia now. Jonathan Gannon next.
They're on their way to Philly. Some cheesesteaks for lunch, maybe. Or just steaks, as they call them there.
Yeah, probably steaks with cheese on top.
Sign me up.
It sounds good.
A lot of other countries roast America for putting cheese on everything. You melt some cheese over my steak, you will not get a complaint from me.
Now, are you American cheese, provolone, cheese whiz?
Honestly, probably provolone and whiz.
I went with whiz Monday night down at Pat's on Arapahoe.
I've never been to a cheesesteak place outside of Philly.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Well, Taste of Philly's good. Denver Ted's is good.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, the key is you have to make sure they have the right roll. If they have an Amoroso roll, you know they're trying to do an authentic Philly cheesesteak.
I think the Broncos should, win in Rome and go to Jim's.
So they call Philly cheesesteaks
just call them steaks.
Just steaks out there. So how do you differentiate between a cheesesteak and a steak?
I just don't think they eat normal steaks in Philly.
They take the ribeye and they slice it and dice it up. There you go.
So you go.
It's literally called Jim's Steaks.
Oh, okay. That's
because it's not a cheesesteak unless you opt to put cheese on it.
There's Jim's Steaks, and then there's Steve's. Is he Prince of Steaks? Right, I think so.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
One.
Then Gino's Steaks.
Pat's, yeah.
Pat's King of Steaks, I believe.
You guys are killing me.
Just go to Jim's.
It's lunchtime right now.
If you're in Philly, go to Jim's and wait. It's worth the wait.
It is. I've waited over an hour.
I waited an hour there 5 years ago. It's tremendous.
In the cold, standing outside does not matter. All right. Before we move on and talk about things other than steaks, a shout out to MSU Denver Online, msudenver.edu/online, the place to go to scope out all they have to offer, and they've got a lot to offer, including the best online education you can get while working a full-time job. MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other Colorado institution, and when you use the code DNVR when you apply, you can have your application fees waived. So check out our friends over at msudenver.edu/online.
My boys, what is up, man? It feels like a little Philly weather, Boston weather outside today. We got that cold drizzle, freezing us out.
People are slipping and sliding around. It's not great out there, but could be a big day for the Broncos. Zach, you mentioned, was it both of these guys that you mentioned yesterday? No, one of these guys, you said Jerod Mayo, a legitimate dark horse candidate.
Yep.
And then Jonathan Gannon, he was with Peyton in Minnesota. Mace, you've kind of alluded to the idea of trying to help elevate a guy.
Although he got an interview with Houston too.
Giving him a chance.
Yeah. I actually think that helped because the Broncos sent out the first interview for Jonathan Gannon, and then a couple others followed.
I'm still annoyed that the Broncos aren't interviewing Mike McDaniel.
Yep.
And then there's another one that I saw randomly. Well, Vance Joseph is getting an interview with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Might be the favorite down there.
Oh, God.
Wow, to go from Brian Flores to Vance Joseph, I just wouldn't understand it from what you're looking for standpoint.
It's who you can work with better, though, and Chris Greer.
They're going to regret that.
He butted
so
heads
deeply
with Brian Flores, but Vance Joseph very well thought of in that building for his year's defensive coordinator.
Wait, so Mace, it's who they work well with or who they can control? Because in Denver, John Elway wanted to control everything, and so
he also wanted a buddy to go to the bar at Elway's with.
Wait, you don't need a buddy, but what you want is harmony.
No, totally, and that's why that's the biggest reason why I'm on board with Dan Quinn.
Yeah,
because I think they're going to have harmony between those two. We'll get to those guys here in just a second, but Woody Page bullied me into listening to a podcast yesterday. So since I didn't want to be a low life with no job or whatever he said,
you call me a low life with no job
right
dude,
now? That's what
I haven't been able to listen
Woody's
to it because
calling.
I've been grinding on this.
What did Woody say? He said, do some research It might even help you in your career if you have one.
Oh, wow.
Not to me, just to the world. So I said, you know what, Woody? Oh, and he said, unless you're too lazy. I'm not lazy, and I have a career. So you know what? I'm going to listen to the podcast. Really impressive. Now, the host does that, like, overly, like, motivational, spiritual thing that kind of is off-putting, but for me, at least.
Me too.
But
that was hard for me to get past, honestly.
Yeah,
in the pod.
But Dan Quinn shines, man, and I mean, I could probably talk about this for a whole show, so I'll just try to keep it to my highlights. One, I don't know how else to explain this other than I've never heard a football coach sound like a real person before, and Dan Quinn just sounds like a real person. Like who has like real conversations outside of football.
Well, and that's something that I've heard is just his ability to connect with everyone.
Yep.
Whether it's media, whether it's players, whether it's players' families, whether it's his boss in terms of a general manager. He does an excellent job of being able to connect, which is very important from a leadership standpoint.
The other thing from a big picture standpoint that stood out is emotional intelligence. Again, a thing that I don't know if a lot of football coaches have, not to get into like toxic masculinity or anything like that, but he's like very in tune with his emotions, very in tune with who he is, very willing to acknowledge his failures and acknowledge his successes and why he was able to reach each one. And so I was just listening to that, like this guy really understands himself, which I think is a huge thing. Then to get down to the details, my two favorite moments of the podcast. One, he talked about how he really believes in building trust with his players and how that has to go both ways. He has to trust them the same way he wants them to trust him. And he mentioned a story where Julio Jones came up to him during a play, and he's like, Julio Jones is not like this. But Julio Jones came to me and said, call this play. I can get behind this corner. And he's like, Julio had never done that before. So I just said, yeah, call the play. Next play, 75-yard touchdown. And he's like, if you want those players to trust you and believe in you, you have to believe in them when they come to you and have a moment like that. I love that. He talked a lot about adapting to players' skill sets, which we all love. And then, oh gosh, what was the final one? The final one that I really loved, trying to keep this brief, is he talked about how he never feels more alive than in 2-minute situations, late game situations. And he says, I pride myself upon having already thought of every possible thing that could happen in those times and being able to react instantly. And it was like
that was music to my ears.
Yes, the anti-Vic Fangio and Vance Joseph.
Yeah, the fact that you've already considered that, and that makes me wonder what he's going to do in terms of how he structures kind of his end game plan, his game management plan. Instead of saying, oh, well, it's going to be just maybe Mike Munchak or Tom McMahon or whoever, I could see part of his plan for the Broncos being someone specifically involved with game management that is in charge of that.
Oh, and he has no ego.
Yes.
When it comes to this stuff. He talked about, how he oftentimes feels like he needs to help with everything, but has to remind himself, I can let these guys do what they need to do and just be there if they need help. That's what I want to be. So I could go on and on. It was really impressive. If you don't like Dan Quinn, there's no way you could listen to that and not come away liking him at least a little bit more. That doesn't mean he has to be your favorite for head coach, and he's still not mine. He's my second. But you won't, if you listen to that, listen to it before the Broncos hire him, so you don't have like the orange and blue glasses on. Listen to it while you still don't like him, and then tell me how you feel afterwards.
Yeah, and I love hearing that about the two minute situations, because not only being able to dish responsibilities out and not have the ego, but live for those situations. That's something that we've seen the last two coaches kind of panic. And we talked about it yesterday, the panic face on the sideline, the confused face. Dan Quinn's not going to have that.
The last thing, he talked about the pain from that Super Bowl loss. And I just loved what he said here, because we all blame Kyle Shanahan, right? Mm-hmm. He said, the thing that eats away at me is that I let people down. I felt like I let people down by not expecting one or two things to happen. And I was hearing that as like, he wasn't ever thinking they were going to be up 28-3 in that game.
Right.
They were they didn't have a game plan. They didn't have a plan for what do we do when we're up 28-3. And maybe that's not what he meant, but that's how I heard it. And I just love that. He took it all on himself, said, I let a lot of people down, and that's what eats at me at night.
Well, it should be on him. I mean, at the end of the day, Kyle Shanahan was just the offensive coordinator. So that's the right type of leadership to take, though, right?
Totally. All right.
It is the right type of leadership, but he talks about trusting his people. And the interesting thing there is that Kyle has blamed himself for that as well and said, oh, man, and has looked back and said, I need to be a little bit more conservative there. And that's where I wonder if one of the lessons that he learns, even though you trust the people that are working for you and working with you, you say, that's where you kind of put the arm on the shoulder and say, look, we're in field goal, we're in Matt Bryant's field goal range, or if it's the Broncos, we're in McManus range. All we need is 3 here, and we've got this.
Yeah.
We don't need to keep throwing the ball.
And really quick on Dan Quinn, Broncos are going to have a lot of competition for him. He just interviewed with the Vikings today. I think he has a couple more. You kind of shrug, though. You don't think they have much competition?
You want him, you got him.
You think so?
In my opinion, yep.
I think Dan Quinn wants this.
That's what I mean.
Most, yes.
I think he wants to work with George Payton. I think that he wants this job. He likes this opportunity. Now, someone say might be some job who comes in and it's too good to pass up, especially if they have a quarterback.
Right.
But
and that would be a selling point for another team.
Totally. But I think it's a you want him, you got him situation. One more thing on Dan Quinn. Surprised the interview didn't go insanely long last night.
Yeah, just a normal interview. But
now the interview could have ended, and then they could have gone out for drinks.
Well, you have to remember that George Payton and Dan Quinn already know each other, so it's not a meet and greet and then an interview. It's just an interview.
I just expected they'd be hanging out all night, and maybe they were. The Broncos just didn't share that information.
Thing is, though, it seems like most of these interviews are about the same length, right?
That's what I mean.
They're all like 3 to 4 hours at the most.
But they also didn't fly out last night for a reason. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went out for some drinks after the interview.
And then slept it off and then got on the plane today.
Didn't they fly out last night, though?
We had heard yesterday.
Did
they? We had heard yesterday that they were staying the night. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that changed.
Okay, yeah, last night I think I heard they were flying out last night.
Maybe the interview went terrible and they canceled their plans to go get drinks after the interview.
What if they just brought Dan with them?
Yeah, it's possible. I guess they're like, just wait in the plane, bro. We'll get you some DoorDash. Okay.
Or maybe it's like, well, you know what? We know you. We'll pick this up in the second interview.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so the Broncos did fly to Boston this morning and had a little mayo in the morning. I wouldn't do it, but some would.
I put mayo on fried egg sandwiches that I have for breakfast.
I guess that. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but it doesn't sound bad. I shouldn't say I wouldn't do it. I haven't done it.
Yeah. Slice of cheese, slice a little spread of mayo, a couple of fried eggs.
So let's dive into Jerod Mayo here. What is his path to becoming the Denver Broncos head coach? What does he do in this interview that could potentially win over George Payton?
It's 100% leadership. And we talk about it with Dan Quinn, how he is the proven leader. Jerod Mayo is the guy with the most untapped potential for leadership right now, and that's how he wows George Payton, because he can't really point his experience with the Patriots. I don't think that's going to be a selling card, because look, so many people can point to their experience with the Patriots, and it's pretty much all bad once they leave the Patriots, and Mace has mentioned it. Not only was Jerod Mayo a big-time leader when he was a player, but also then went on in the corporate world and was a good leader. Then he brought him back to be a coach with the Patriots, and everything we've heard is fantastic leadership. So that's how he blows George Payton away, is by coming in and George just saying, this is the best leader I've ever been around. And if he's only 35 years old, what type of leader could he become? And that is why Jerod Mayo is such a hot name right now around the NFL. The Broncos, I believe, were the first team to be in on him, and that sparked a lot of interest around the league. And since leadership is the number one thing George Payton's looking for, that's a huge reason why I heard don't sleep on him yet.
Yeah, and the other possibility here, of course, if he doesn't get a head coaching job out of this cycle, is there's still the possibility that he could be interviewing to be your coordinator.
And so
less of a possibility, I think, because of the other things that may be in front of him, including potentially that Houston job. But there's still a potential path to hiring a Dan Quinn or hiring a Nathaniel Hackett and having Jerod Mayo come aboard and be a coordinator. I would not say it's likely, I'd say it's still in the realm of possibility.
Now, so for me, I think that is a very likely scenario with Luke Getsy, who the Broncos interviewed to be their offensive coordinator, whether Dan Quinn's a coach, whether it's Nathaniel Hackett, and you don't really have to worry about another team hiring Luke Getsy. If you want Jerod Mayo in your building, you cannot discount him and say this is for defensive coordinator. And I do think that if he's not hired, Mace, I think that's a great point, that he could be your defensive coordinator. I think he's going to be hired by someone. And so if you want him in where you can kind of put Luke Getsy to the side, I don't think you can do that with Mayo.
Yeah.
I'm not rolling the dice on a first-time coach that isn't an offensive guy. If I'm going first-time coach and I'm taking the risk that someone might come in here and be in over their head, which is my number one fear when it comes to these guys, I'm just worried that it's a little too much for Jerod Mayo or for Mike McDaniel even, who's my favorite, to come in and handle everything.
I mean, it was too much for Vic Fangio, and he literally
Too much for Vance
came
Joseph.
in with 3.5 decades of pro coaching experience.
It doesn't work for everyone. So if I'm rolling the dice on that, I'm also rolling the dice on getting the next hot offensive name that takes the league by storm with their great play calling. That to me is worth rolling the dice for in the golden age of offensive football in the NFL.
So then would you have been out on Brandon Staley last year?
Yes.
Okay, fair, very fair. But you would have obviously, and we've talked about this before, you would have been in on Sean McVay, at least for an interview.
Yeah, Sean McVay, Zach Taylor.
Right.
And it's not even like Zach Taylor is taking the league by storm with crazy play calls. But he knew what he was doing on offense. He knew what he wanted at quarterback. He did have the luxury of the number 1 overall pick following a Heisman national champion. But I was in on Cliff Kingsbury, who I'm actually might be out on now.
Yeah.
But I want, if I'm rolling the dice on that, it's show me why you're going to get us up to speed with the NFL offense.
Yeah,
So
and
you might be out on Kingsbury. That's actually news.
I'm not on it.
Yeah.
I read. Did I read that stat on this? I guess I didn't read that stat on this show.
Right.
There was an alarming stat that came out. I saw it from Action Network. I've seen a few places. In his 8 years of coaching, in the last 6 games of the season, he's never done better than losing 4 out of 6.
Yikes! And weren't there some that were 0-5 and losing 5
1
of
and
6?
5. Yeah, I mean,
And he had
Yikes.
Patrick Mahomes
yes, he did.
at Texas Tech for a couple of minutes there.
And he's
It's
had a number 1
basically-
overall pick in Kyler
Yeah.
Murray here.
It basically follows the same trend every single year: hot start, slow finish.
Yeah.
That's, to me, like when if I'm the Cardinals GM, I'm looking at this 8 consecutive seasons of this and just being like, I think this is just who he is. I don't know if we can get him off of this. So he's really smart when it comes to scheming offense in the offseason. I think that's what this comes down to.
But
And so he
then
comes
people
in with
figure him out.
Right, exactly. He comes in
Yeah.
with all this new stuff. People figure it out, and he does. I don't know if he just doesn't have the time or what to come up with the next thing in the middle of the season. But it's definitely alarming.
It's kind of crazy how he went from maybe the hottest coach for the Oklahoma job and
Still
the
the
hottest
hottest coach in
I
some
know.
regards.
You got to get rid of the facial hair if you want that title back.
Wow.
And especially tied with that Oklahoma job to now, a lot of people are out on him. Now, he's not going to get fired this offseason, but I think one more year of this, he could be.
Yeah, and to be fair, even if I might be out on him now, it still would have been a better hire than Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they were in the playoffs this year, right? They lost in the playoffs, but that's better than just not having an opportunity.
Wouldn't have had Kyler here, though, unless they would have been willing to trade up.
Well, I mean, would the Cardinals have
yeah.
taken Kyler without Cliff?
It's about,
I don't
depends who
think
they
so.
hired.
Yeah.
Depends if their coach whoever they hired fell in love with Kyler. And it's possible that they would have.
Kyler,
Maybe Kyler would be a Raider right now because they had the 4th pick that year, right?
Yeah.
my Kyler concerns are rising as well. Now, I'm not ready to pull the plug on him. He's always going to be a very good quarterback in this league.
But he had his Trent Dilfer, Jake Plummer moment there Monday night.
When Russell Wilson is saying what you should be doing and you're doing the exact opposite,
Yeah.
you got me concerned.
I'll say Kyler is he's pretty darn inconsistent,
Yep.
and that is a concern.
Okay, on Jerod Mayo, any other things that you think we need to note
Yeah, I do. I think a big topic of concern in Denver is the Patriot way. Look, the Broncos have hired a young genius on one side of the ball to be a first-time head coach before, and that blew up in their face. Is that, I want to ask you guys, is that something that the Broncos should be concerned about?
I mean, the only thing is, like, the one guy who's kind of connected to the Patriots, even though he didn't coach for Belichick, but he played for him a long time, is Mike Vrabel. And Mayo's resume more closely resembles that of Vrabel than anybody else who's come from off of the Bill Belichick tree. So I think you're looking at kind of a different set of attributes. Flores had been a much longer-term coach.
Okay.
I mean, basically with Vrabel, you had 7 years coaching, 4 years in the pros, played a long time at linebacker, team leader, team captain, just kind of like Jerod Mayo was. So you looked at Vrabel when the Titans hired him, and you're like, wow, only 4 years in the pros as a coach, 1 year as a coordinator, and the Titans were 32nd in scoring defense. But you were thinking about the leadership attributes. You were thinking about how he not only runs the team, but how he connects the locker room to the rest of the organization, how he gets everyone, basically rowing in the same direction. And to Tennessee's credit, it's worked. And it's worked without a great quarterback, a guy who's been pretty good at times, but not great. And so, frankly, I think Mike Vrabel's success is why we're talking about Jerod Mayo being on radars right now, because okay, what has translated from the Patriot way, from the Belichick way? It's this kind of coach.
Fair enough. I would be worried about it, not necessarily because of Josh McDaniels, but because of the other failures. One after another, everywhere they go.
College level too. I mean, because you look at guys like Charlie Weiss, who, bombed out at Notre Dame. I mean, and then Kansas. It happened. It's a pattern. That methodology, with the exception of Vrabel in Tennessee, that methodology just has not translated.
I think of it like this, and this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but Peyton Manning did things a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. No one else changed plays at the line the way that he did. No one else does that. Like, if Teddy Bridgewater goes into a game and tries to play it like Peyton Manning, it's going to be a disaster. Peyton Manning is one of the greatest of all time. Bill Belichick might be the greatest of all time. I think that the idea that you can take his style and just go somewhere else and do it is asinine.
Well, when you make a copy, back in the old days when you go into the Xerox and make copies, right? You make one copy and it looks fine, but it's not quite as good as the original. Then you make a copy of the copy and a copy of the copy and so on. The more copies you make, the farther you are removed from what the original is. It's not the same. And I think that's what we end up getting here with some of these Belichick acolytes.
Here's the difference with Vrabel, though. Vrabel was never a coach with the Patriots.
Yeah, he played a decade, but he never coached.
Exactly.
Yes.
He never coached there. Jerod Mayo is kind of the complete opposite. He is a 100% New England Patriot. Only played with the Patriots, only coached with the Patriots. Now, does have some experience outside the NFL, but all of his experience in the NFL is with the Patriots. So I think that's what makes some people concerned, is he's the ultimate Patriot. And like you said, Ryan, it's not just Josh McDaniels. It's a lot of other guys that have been Patriots that have gone on and failed miserably. So there's two things I'm looking for if I'm George Paton. The first, how willing is he to work with me? Because George Paton would be the guy that Josh McDaniels didn't have. Josh McDaniels didn't have anyone above him that could say no to him. I mean, he came in and just took over all the power. George Paton obviously wouldn't let that happen. So would he be willing to work with him? If so, that's a good sign that he would be different. And the other thing is, if he comes in, and it would be a bold strategy, a bad strategy, if Jerod Mayo comes in with the a-hole type of mentality to show that type of leadership in the interview. If he does that, no, sorry, you're gone. But if he comes in and he just seems like a completely different type of leader, then you shouldn't just eliminate someone because they coached for someone or they played with someone or they went to this sort of school. You're going to miss out on good people there. So that's the biggest thing. And I think George Paton can get a very good idea of that in an interview or two if there's a second one.
And I would say this for Jerod Mayo, be himself, because the way you've kind of seen him when he's just the way he is on the sideline, the way he was as a player, the way he interviews, being the AH, as it were, that's not him.
Right. And
So I
just
say
don't think
be
he would.
himself. Yeah.
I don't think he would do that if it's not him.
Yeah.
I think he's a lot more like Dan Quinn than Bill Belichick in terms of emotional intelligence.
Like that.
And
I like
our guy Hank comes in and says, Mayo would probably get me the most excited. And I think in terms of a non-offensive guy, I agree. And of course, the offense is going to be exciting, but I agree. I think he would really excite people once he's in here.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to win your press conferences.
Exactly.
I have a feeling about that
Yep.
just because he's a motivator.
That's not everything. Nick Sirianni lost the press conference. He's doing fine.
I would be more excited about Dan Quinn.
Okay.
Yep. All right, guys. Before we move on, I want to tell you guys a little story. So last night, I had a little business meeting downstairs, and
What type of business meeting are we talking?
a meeting about business.
Oh, okay. A real one.
Yes.
Not
No,
like
it
one-
wasn't
okay,
like a
okay.
let's get hammered meeting. I do like this. Guys asking, hey, what should I get? What should I order? I'm like, bro, you got to get the chicken sandwich. Anyways, finish up. Here's the quote. That chicken sandwich was literally the best I've ever had.
How about that?
Because I've been like not trying to oversell it, right? I'm
Right.
like, I think it's the best you can get at a bar.
Yeah.
Straight from the source. First time ever having it. No connection here. Literally the best I've ever had. That's why you got to come down to the DNVR bar.
What do
and
you
try the
think
chicken
makes
sandwich.
it good? Like what? There are chicken sandwiches almost anywhere. What is the difference between the DNVR chicken sandwich and the other guys?
So it's double dipped, so you get extra crunchy on the
That's huge.
outside.
Okay.
And then it's the buns that we have here are amazing. And then they don't short you on the pickles, which are you got to have a bite of pickle in every bite, which you don't always get with a chicken sandwich.
Right.
And then that chipotle mayo on there, or
Ah.
chipotle aioli is
Yes.
what it is.
Man, that sounds so freaking good.
It's amazing.
Although I don't think I want pickles on my pizza. That may be one thing that you can shortchange me on, but don't worry, they're not gonna do that over at Sexy Pizza.
I think there is a pickle on pizza
a
thing
pickle
somewhere.
pizza. Okay.
Not at Sexy Pizza.
Isn't ranch dipping your crust in ranch? Isn't that a Colorado thing?
No, dipping our crust in honey is a
In
Colorado
honey,
thing.
is it? I think it may be ranch as well.
Well,
No?
we dipped the whole pizza in
It's
ranch.
really true. And you can do that over at Sexy Pizza. And of course, they are well within our community. 13 years being entrenched in the Denver community. And one of the cool things they do is they give back to our community with their Philanthro pies. A portion of every sale from these 5 specialty pies is donated to a range of different nonprofits right here in Colorado, which is so cool. You can go to sexy.pizza and look at their about page to see who they donate to. And you can also go to sexy.pizza to get some delicious pizza with 12, 16, 18-inch crusts. Of course, they also have salads, which Mace loves the Italian one. You can get everything you want, and it is so delicious. We put our stamp of approval on it because we have it at our DNVR Broncos tailgates, and you can bring it home as well. They have 4 Denver locations, one in Capitol Hill, Old South Park, Jefferson, Park Hill, and actually 5. They have a new location in Trinidad, so if you're close to any of those, make sure to get that for dinner tonight or this weekend.
I'm looking up pickles on pizza now, by the way.
I've seen it. There's like a hamburger and pickle pizza.
Yes, that's what I like. A cheeseburger and pickle.
Yeah.
So you basically you have the ground beef, the cheese from the pizza, you have the pickle.
I mean, I'm in.
Now the thing is, do you dip it in like ketchup?
Oh, you might lose me there.
Yeah, see-
What if you made, instead of pasta sauce, ketchup was the bottom layer?
Oh my gosh. You know someone's done it.
Yes. What was the one that we saw? Oh, banana on pizza. They
Yeah.
do that in Sweden.
Right.
That's
There's all sorts of weird stuff going on in Scandinavia because like
Shout out Timmy.
dipping your pizza in ketchup is a Norwegian thing. Next door over from Sweden.
I've heard someone recently who did that. I think someone at PHNX dips their pizza in ketchup.
Well, if you're doing that, people
Yeah.
may say you've been hitting up Lightshade Dispensary a little too much, and
Fair.
maybe if you're trying to get all those munchies, you may be, and you can get 25% off going to Lightshade Dispensary, whether you go in one of their 11 in-person locations here in the Denver metro area, or if you're going online, you get 25% off by using the code DNVR over at Lightshade Dispensary. Dispensary, and right now they are featuring Wana Optimal's Fast Asleep 20 to 100 THC to CBD. And if you want to get some shut-eye, get to bed faster, sleep better, Wana is the way to go. They've got those, whether you're the connoisseur or you're the casual customer, they've got everything you could want over at Lightshade Dispensary. And make sure to use the code, whether you're in person or online, DNVR, to get 25% off.
By the way, speaking of Norway and pizza, Norwegians eat the most pizza in the world on a per capita basis.
Respect.
That is not who I would have guessed.
50 million frozen pizzas sold in Norway.
Oh, they just go frozen.
Wow.
Yes. They love frozen. There's a frozen pizza called Pizza Grandiosa that has been unofficially called, quote, the national dish of Norway.
How about that?
Yes.
I have so much respect for that. I want to go there now. Quickly,
They're
here
going to dip it in ketchup. Apparently, the people have, this pizza at, holiday meals. Like Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, they're eating pizza.
These sound like my people. Quickly, a coaching update from Woody Page here. I feel like this is notable. Mm-hmm. He's speaking in absolutes here, so I feel like he must have a pretty good source on this. Quinn and Moore interviewed extremely well, as we would expect. Aaron Glenn will be a head coach, but not yet. Same for Mayo. Getsy impressive, but not ready. Quinn and Hackett and Quinn, still leaders. Bieniemy, Callahan, and O'Connell still have real chance.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So he's essentially ruling out Mayo.
Is it interesting, though, that the Callahan interview is the only one that won't be in person? Now, there's a reason.
It's not an option, right?
It's the schedule, because the Bengals play on Saturday. They're talking to Callahan. Is it tomorrow or Friday?
Friday, I think.
Yeah, and with the travel and everything, they can't do it in person. But it might weaken Callahan a little bit that he's the only one who's not going to be able to sit down face-to-face with the Broncos.
It could also get him an excuse for a second interview.
It could. It very well could. I find it interesting he thinks all three of those remaining candidates still have a chance. Or if he just doesn't want to write them off before they have an interview.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
We went over this yesterday. I don't know if anyone ever had a chance.
It's very true. Yep, we called the dogs off.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Gannon here. Certainly not one where, if you look at the numbers for him as a defensive coordinator, you're going to get excited. Similar to Aaron Glenn in that regard.
Yeah, well, what you're looking at Jonathan Gannon is the next Brandon Staley. It is what you're trying to hire. If
Brandon
you hire
Staley
him.
missed the playoffs. I don't know if we forgot about that.
I would still say he had a successful season, and I'm higher on Brandon Staley than maybe you. I would still absolutely take him to be the head coach.
I'll say this. If he was the Broncos coach and they had Justin Herbert and they didn't make the playoffs, we'd be hammering him.
As his first year as a head coach?
I think so. I think
they should have been a playoff.
I think playoffs should have been expectation for them this year, and they fell short of expectations.
Okay. I think
that's because they're the Chargers.
I think he had a good first season. Not a great, but a good first season. I think he showed me enough where, man, that's a guy that I want as my head coach.
I like a lot about him, but I got to see results on Sundays. I think he's great, Monday through Saturday.
Well,
he has a winning record.
He has a winning record,
yes,
but
he does.
He has Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert. Yeah.
And the other thing is, he's a defensive guy. His defense was terrible most of the year.
I just don't. What I'm saying here
Guys,
is
this reminds me too much of Dan Quinn. I mean, we talk about it. Dan Quinn had a MVP caliber quarterback, which you could say Justin Herbert is trending toward. His defense was the underwhelming part. You guys are so high on Quinn, yet low on Staley.
And
he
Staley
did this
hasn't
his first
proved
year.
anything.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn went to a Super Bowl.
Dan Quinn's been exactly.
Right now, Brandon Staley has a better winning record.
Look, I'm not saying
Quinn
I'm
has three. He has 2 conference championship rings. One of them as assistant. One Super Bowl ring as an assistant. He's guided a team to the Super Bowl as a head coach. As John Fox would say, there are skins on the wall for.
All I'm saying,
Brandon Staley just doesn't have.
Dan Quinn had way more experience, though.
Let me just say this. I'm not saying I'm out on Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I'm not impressed enough by him in 1 year to be searching for the next one.
Okay, and I would be personally, and I'm that impressed with where Staley is. And saying that though, I don't need to go search for the next one. right now. I like Brandon Staley, and I think it's more important to go find the next young offensive head coach as opposed to the next young offensive or young defensive head coach. And that's what Jonathan Gannon is, because like you said, Ryan, he had some good stretches as defensive coordinator with the Eagles this year. He also started off really tough, and then obviously we saw what happened this past week against Tampa Bay.
Gronk wide open.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think is going to be in the mix in a couple of years. I still think he's a little bit off, though.
Yeah, there was some friction between him and Fletcher Cox earlier this year. The Eagles were season, I should say. The Eagles were struggling. It was right after they lost to Las Vegas. They were giving up, I believe, at that point, 28 points a game. And Cox kind of called Gannon out, not mentioning his name, but kind of pointed to frustration with how he was being used, the type of pressure packages that they were bringing. And so Gannon, to his credit, kind of spoke with Fletcher Cox, got on the same page, changed some things. Cox was a better player down the stretch. He returned to his normal form in terms of pressure rate, hurry rate, sacks, etc. in the back half of the season. And the Eagles, as a defense, improved from 28 points a game to 16 up until that game where they sat all their starters in Week 18. So one thing you like about Gannon is the willingness to not simply dismiss what a concern that a key player has, and to actually listen to that player and incorporate that into what you're doing tactically. That's kind of a Dan Quinn thing, an emotional intelligence
I was
thing.
just going to say, it reminds me of something I heard on that podcast with Dan Quinn yesterday. He was talking about how he's in a meeting with one of his coaches, and one of his coaches was like, we need these players to call each other out more. We need them to call each other out and tell them when they're screwing up. And Dan Quinn said to the assistant, we don't even do that enough as coaches. How can we expect them to do it? And he went on to think about how, we don't offer enough constructive criticism just as humans. And I think it's probably true, because we're, a lot of times we think it might hurt someone's feelings. Yeah. And I love Fletcher Cox probably should have gone directly to Jonathan Gannon, but I love that Jonathan Gannon was able to accept that criticism and put it into action.
Yeah, and that's leadership right there, right? And that's what you would be hiring Jonathan Gannon for, is not for the incredible defensive mind, just like Brandon Staley. You're not hiring him to come in and make your defense the best in the league, just like Dan Quinn. I expect there to be a drop-off from the Broncos defense going from Vic Fangio to anyone, but even Dan Quinn is a defensive coach. I expect that drop-off. You would bring him in to be that type of leader. I think he's a few years away. I think this is something where George Payton's helping his guy out. He obviously likes him in order to do this. For him to get the job, though, guys, what does he have to do? Because I don't really see a path for him.
The greatest interview of his life.
He wasn't even mentioned in that Woody tweet.
Yeah. He wasn't. Shows you kind of where he's at.
I mean, I think that he's got to just blow everyone away. And even then, I don't think that's necessarily going to be enough for him to get the head coaching job right now.
And one of the reasons why I've seen a lot of Broncos fans really down on a couple of guys, Kellen Moore being one of them recently, and Jonathan Gannon being another, is so many people, including in our chat right now on YouTube, which if you're tuning in live, go to YouTube, hit us with a thumbs up when you're there, subscribe, turn on alerts, because we're going live every single day. We want you to join us. We'd really appreciate the like. But one of the things that people keep saying is, Eagles fans want teams to take Jonathan Gannon. They want him gone. Cowboys fans, exactly.
Lions fans don't want Aaron Glenn gone. But Eagles fans are like, Gannon, take him, please.
And Cowboys fans, they want Kellen Moore gone, which is kind of crazy for what he's been able to do.
So who do they want as head coach then? Because I thought they wanted McCarthy gone too.
I think they want Dan Quinn to be their head coach. I've seen a lot of people wanting that in the past couple of days. But
they fell in love with him that night. He had to fill in for McCarthy in New Orleans, I think.
Yep. But that's something where obviously you don't judge your head coach search off that. But it is interesting, and I think that's why a lot of fans are very much out on Kellen Moore and Jonathan Gannon, as they see other fans of those teams saying, take him. And they're like, what? We're going to promote this guy when this team doesn't even want him?
What did I see? Something really concerning came out about Kellen Moore in the last 24 hours. Did you guys see that?
about
I don't know.
personality,
Something about not
hairstyle.
No, it was like not having the players prepared for something, and it was just like, oh, he's a little in over his head in that moment.
Maybe
I can't remember what
maybe
it was.
calling a QB sneak on with 14
It
seconds
wasn't-
left
it
with no timeouts.
It wasn't about that. Dang it. Maybe someone in the comments saw it. It was on Twitter yesterday of a quote from a player or. It's coming to me. Okay, all right. It was Troy Aikman.
Okay.
On the radio, talking about how the Niners were bringing 4, but not necessarily just playing zone coverage and just trying to take stuff away. And he's like, they were only rushing 4, but they had CeeDee Lamb in man coverage. And he's like, if that was me and Michael Irvin, CeeDee Lamb would have had 11 catches in the first quarter. And then he went on to say. Something along the lines of like, coaches these days are so caught up in running their plays and running their schemes. We used to just say like, if he's gonna play that far off of you and play man, just go run a 10-yard hook and I'll hit you.
Here's the quote, and he's talking about kind of coordinators in general, but clear like he's implying this about Kellen Moore.
Right.
Quote: "The coordinator, it's all about scheme rather than the corners playing softies scared to death. Just run the route tree, just run a comeback, run a dig route, run a curl, run anything, and you're going to complete the pass whenever you want." Michael Irvin would have had 10 catches at halftime if they had played us, the 90s Cowboys, the way the Niners played CeeDee Lamb in that game. So I just don't quite understand that. It's interesting. I was at Madden's memorial service yesterday in Oakland, and Peyton Manning was there. Everything comes back to Peyton, right?
Sure does.
And we got to talking about the game, and I had this conversation with him, and he agreed.
So that means that Kellen Moore is officially checked off the Broncos candidacy list with Peyton Manning out on him.
Peyton's out on him. I'm also out on him.
Yep, and that means the Broncos are out on him.
And I'm sure Peyton was the same way. You want to play soft on Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, just turn around. I'll throw you the ball.
You want to guard Reggie Wayne with Rock Alexander?
Have fun.
The evil laugh. Good luck.
Isn't that also what we're talking about, is being able to adjust? Whether it's adjust mid-season like Cliff Kingsbury, whether it's adjusting mid-game, whether it's adjusting to your personnel who you have because someone got injured, and that's something that you kind of need as a head coach.
Yeah, you know what? There's a theory that some people in football have had over the years on coach hiring, some that prefer defensive coaches, and they say they're better problem solvers. They're better at adjusting because defense is ultimately adapting to what the offense throws at you and having a counter for that. And that sometimes offensive coaches, they get kind of too locked into what they're doing because they're trying to set the pace. They're trying to set they're trying to attack, and yet it's the teams that maybe have someone defensive at the top that tend to kind of adapt better. And an example here, why John Fox was the right person when the Broncos hired him is, I don't know that an offensive coach would have looked at Tim Tebow and said, all right, let's scrap everything we're doing and construct a game plan that this guy who can't complete more than 47% of his passes, let's construct a plan that works, ball control, and take the occasional shot.
Yep.
John Fox, to his credit, did that. I'm not sure that an offensive coach who was really attached to their scheme, in charge of a team, would do the same thing.
I legitimately want to update my coach favorites because I think Kellen Moore is still on there as like number 3.
Let's do that. Can we do that?
We can do that. Yeah, we will do that. I don't know if I don't want to throw that on Marissa as she's producing her first Bronco show here, but we'll do it after the show, and we'll get those tweeted out. Being able to see what the defense is doing and reacting to that and attacking it in that way is like day one of offensive coordinator school.
It's got to be, right?
Ideally.
So that really, like, hearing two Hall of Fame quarterbacks talk about that and be like, this guy didn't give his team the best chance to win because he couldn't realize what the defense is doing and react to that's concerning.
Or even just adapt to conditions.
I mean that's like Madden 101.
It is.
But look at the Patriots, the game that they won in Buffalo when it was 40-mile-an-hour winds. That's Belichick and McDaniels, and Belichick at his heart, a defensive guy, saying, okay, we got to adapt what we're doing here. We have to change. We have to change based on what we're facing in this moment.
Well, and that's something that the Patriots do incredibly well.
Right.
And that's one of the things that it's like, why doesn't every team take this? 1 week they can come out and pass it 55 times. The next week they can come out and run it 55 times. It just seems so obvious, yet so few teams do it. It's clearly difficult. And guys, my last thing about both of these guys, Jonathan Gannon and Jerod Mayo, is one of the things they have to do is they have to come in to win to get this job. They have to come in with the best plan for their coaching staff
and quarterback.
It's definitely because Dan Quinn can come in and he has more credit, and George Payton isn't going to be as critical on what his coaching staff is going to look like because he's got experience. He can hire the young guys because he's an older guy, so he can mentor those guys. These guys, Jerod Mayo and Jonathan Gannon, have to smash it out of the park with who they're going to hire. And it's probably more difficult to do that, to convince someone that, yeah, I'm going to go hire this guy that's been in the league for 30 years to be my offensive coordinator. That was Pat Shurmur. Right. That's what the Broncos have had. That's the Mike McCoy. That's the Billy Moose. That's all of these guys. So I think it's going to be much harder for them to do that, and they're going to have to in order to get the job.
Funny how age is appealing in defensive coordinators and a turnoff with offensive coordinators
because
really
they've seen everything. Like one of the advantages of like a Wade Phillips is that he had seen everything thrown at him as a defensive coordinator over the decades, and so you're seeing this game plan. Yeah, and he's like, well, he can sit in the meeting and talk about how he saw something like that in 1990.
But then RPO comes around and you got to come up with a new thing, but you're used to coming up with new things.
Remember when Larry Coyer was the Broncos defensive coordinator? He was like a lifer. He'd been in college, the USFL, everywhere.
Miami guy?
Coyer?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so.
No, never was at Miami.
No, I don't think so. But the thing about him was like at that moment, Shanahan, the GM, was kind of in the letting down Shanahan, the coach. Right. So it was very much other than you'd get a Champ Bailey or a John Lynch, but then you'd get let's get some ex-Browns defensive linemen and try to figure this out, and let's bring in these other spare parts and try to put them together. And Coyer was very good from his experience at maximizing those guys and then adapting them to what they saw on a week-to-week basis. And so you had under Coyer 4 years of pretty good defense. Now, again, it would get exposed when you had to throw Rock Alexander out there against Reggie Wayne. But for the most part, it was his problem-solving that allowed the Broncos to be a good team in those days on the defensive side.
Larry Coyer's coaching resume is insane. It has 60 teams on it. He's coaching for Martins Ferry High School, then he's with the Memphis Showboats.
That's a Vic Fangio route,
all the way to the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos.
The guy went everywhere. But you look at some of the defensive coaches that have just hung around for a while, and like Vic Fangio's resume, that dude's been pretty much everywhere. It seems like
every level.
Yeah.
Well, if you want experience, you should head on down to Green Mountain Dental Group. They are the most experienced in the metro area when it comes to getting your teeth right. And when you sign up for a cleaning, x-ray, and exam over at Green Mountain Dental Group, they're going to hook you up with a free Sonicare toothbrush so you can keep your teeth pearly and white, even when you're not in the chair over at Green Mountain Dental. Just 15 minutes outside of Denver, over there in Lakewood. Check them out. You'll love them. They'll treat you like family. You'll talk coaching search the whole time.
And you're going to have to go to Green Mountain Dental after sucking down so much Strava Craft Coffee because you're going to love Strava Craft Coffee. It packs so many 2-in-1 punches. The first one is it's not just delicious coffee, but it has that CBD punch, which can help relieve aches, pains, headaches, migraines, anything that's going on, it can help relieve. Some people even say it gets rid of the coffee jitters, so you can have a cup of coffee without feeling any jitters. And the second punch that it packs is if you use the code DNVR over at Strava Craft Coffee, DNVR25 at checkout on StravaCraftCoffee.com, you'll get 25% off your first purchase of Strava. And then if you subscribe after that, you'll save 20% off every single order you do after that. And you can even have it set up to be delivered every 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, or however often you prefer. It'll show up straight to your door at 20% off. They also have delicious flavors, so you got to check them out over at StravaCraftCoffee.com and use that code DNVR25.
All right, guys, let's jump into the comments here. Quickly want to remind you that if you want to have your comments read, you become a member at thednvr.com. And not only will you get your comments read on the show, but you'll also get access to all of the awesome written content we've been doing on this Coaching Shirts. You'll get member beers when you come down here to the DNVR bar, which are 6 ounces bigger for the same exact price as the normies, if you will. So become a member, join, and you'll get your comments read like we're about to do. First, I think we have a couple super chats.
And really quick, before we hit those, if you're tuning in live, this is also a podcast.
Yes,
so
it is.
if you can't tune in live, make sure to find us on podcast. Just search Broncos anywhere you find podcasts. We'll be the first one that pops up, DNVR Broncos.
Sure will be. All right, let's get to these super chats real quick, then we'll hop into the comment section. First one here from Jelly. Here we go. Oh, yay, another defensive guy. Okay, cool. Who is our franchise quarterback, and how do we get them? Not a bridge or even an elite bridge, Aaron Rodgers, that have 5 years left. We need our Josh, Pat, and Justin. Who's ours? They're not out there right now. So.
That's just straight up the question. If a guy comes in and says, I can guarantee you I will draft the next Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin, that's the guy that you're hiring. If you can guarantee that, it's just it's not easy to find those guys. But something you have to do is you have to be willing to draft those guys. The Broncos haven't done that since Paxton Lynch, and I even make the argument that drafting a quarterback in the 20s is not a true investment.
Yeah, and a couple of mock drafts out today, one from Mel Kiper Jr., one from Dan Brugler. Both have the Broncos going inside linebacker at number 9.
Doesn't scream quarter. Man.
Would be funny.
You move on from Vic and then do that. That would be funny.
Yeah, the thing is, though, whether it's trading for a top-level quarterback or picking one or making a deal, that first-round pick or some combination of second-round picks, it's going to the quarterback. One way or the other, it's going to be involved with getting a new quarterback here.
I certainly hope so.
Yep, Mike Kliss saying today that he thinks the Broncos will go the trade for a veteran route again. That could
Shocker.
be really exciting.
It could be.
It could also be really disappointing.
It very well could be if it's one of the top 2.
You could talk me into Jimmy Garoppolo with Carson Strong, take those 2s, take a second-round pick, move to the back end of round 1.
Is Mike McDaniel the OC?
Yes. And then you tell Carson Strong, all right, you got that knee, have the surgery you need, get healthy, and we'll see you in 23.
I don't hate it, that's for sure.
I mean, we talked about yesterday.
You're not in love with it. But
I'll take anything with Mike McDaniel, to be honest.
I do not like it. And the reason, I want to go all in on one guy.
Jay Norvell kind of sold me on Carson Strong.
Well, then go all in on him. I'm down for that.
Well, I'm going all in on him by saying, look, we're going to give you a year to get the knee right and get healthy, because that's the question on him.
Isn't the thing with
Arm
Carson
talent,
Strong,
brain, that's not the problem.
Isn't the thing with Carson Strong, though, that it's not his knee is an issue this year, it's a potential that his knee is never going to be right?
But there's also, it depends on what the medicals reveal, because one thing you could find out, it might take a significant surgery, like literally a transplant of a cadaver ligament into his knee. That's the most kind of extreme thing.
If he's a Bronco, he can have mine.
Yeah, well, I
go.
appreciate your generosity.
John can give him his other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, good call. But that's the surgery that may have the best chance to get him right, but it's a full year recovery.
Okay.
The good thing is if I think that's the case,
Right.
if that's the case, I don't think you're going to have to pick him with the high pick.
But I love Strong's arm talent, and I love how much Jay Norvell put on him pre-snap at Nevada. So he comes into the NFL already able to handle a lot cerebrally.
All right, guys, we got to move a little bit quicker here. I've got a semi-hard out here.
Okay.
Not to be confused with semi-hard on. Ian B.
Wow.
Easy.
Don't forget that fan pessimism regarding Quinn. Don't get the fan pessimism regarding Quinn because he was fired, lost the Super Bowl. Who hasn't been fired? Strange times considering we just had 2 head coaches.
Strange litmus is what he said.
Oh, sorry. Strange litmus considering we just had 2 coaches who could hardly string wins together. Sorry, these lights are right in my eyes as I try to read those.
They are bright today. And, I mean, Ian B., this comes down to, I think we talked about this before the show, the John Fox. You know, John Fox was a guy that was going to become stable and bring stability and leadership to an organization. That there's no doubt that Dan Quinn's going to be great in that department and a good head coach. It's just, do you want to go for the guy with the high floor and maybe a more limited ceiling, or do you want to go with with the guy with a low floor, i.e. one of the unknown guys, with potentially a much higher ceiling. And that's something that George Paton has to decide. What we've found out from the moves he's made so far is he likes going the safe route. So that would absolutely point to Dan Quinn.
And the other thing is, I mean, imagine Bronco history if they hadn't hired Mike Shanahan, who was fired during the season by the Raiders. If they had not hired John Fox, who went 2-14 his last season with Carolina. If they hadn't brought in Gary Kubiak, who was 2-11 and got fired in Houston in his final season.
Is every Broncos Super Bowl appearance even led by a coach who was a retread?
No, because Red Miller was a first-time head coach, and so was Dan Reeves. Every Broncos Super Bowl win,
every win
was led by a retread.
I think if you look in the past 10 years or 12 years, more coaches that have won the Super Bowl have been first-time head coaches, though.
Yep. By the way, who did Dan Quinlan lose to in a Super Bowl? A retread.
Yep, it's true. It's true.
And who did he win a Super Bowl with? A retread.
A retread.
Really quick, guys, got to get your who would you like more, Jerod Mayo or Jonathan Gannon? If it was down to those two.
Mayo.
Man, you don't like it either.
No,
you like it, Mace?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Look, that's where I'd be really saying, okay, trust George Paton.
That would be a big
I
one.
want to know what his staff looks like. I mean, is he bringing in some old hands? Like, is he calling up Romeo Crennel to be his assistant head coach? That sort of thing.
Right.
You could sell me on that if you've got people around him who are kind of guiding him and pointing him in the right direction.
Yeah, Ryan's light on Mayo. I'm going heavy Mayo. I'd be okay with it.
Yeah. I don't want either one. Not at all.
You want mayo with olive oil? Mayo with a little wasabi? That's what we can.
To speak my language a little
I mean,
bit.
you know what? I mean, Jerod Mayo would lend himself to headlines, right? Like if he's angry, we could say, "Ooh, that's some spicy mayo today."
Man,
too much mayo.
I hope that there's an assistant coach you could hire whose last name would be Aioli.
Yes.
And you could have
Well,
Mayo,
you could get
Aioli.
Nick Aliotti.
Close enough. Close enough.
And so, if someone hugs Jerod Mayo after a big win, are we captioning it by saying "Hold the Mayo"?
Oh my goodness.
All right. Marissa, would you mind bringing back just the regular live chat? We'll keep rolling along in the comments here. Mile high till I die. I've been trying to figure out if the Broncos will re-sign Melvin Gordon this offseason. I think it will end up depending on whether or not we get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. If we get one of those two, we probably won't need two starting caliber running backs and may not be able to afford Melvin regardless. However much I want one of those two quarterbacks, I see the scenarios as unlikely. And in the case that they aren't coming to save the day, I think we should re-sign Melvin. Whether we trade for Garoppolo, ride with Locke, or draft a QB, we will likely be dealing with middling quarterback play or worse, and we will need to rely on an elite running game and defense to pick up the slack. Also, from Melvin's perspective, it could make sense to stay in Denver. He could potentially prolong his career by splitting carries with Javonte and taking less damage over time as a result.
I would say simply, if Russell Wilson is a Bronco, I think Melvin Gordon will take a pay cut to stick with his old college teammate. They were together back in 2011 Wisconsin. I know they both think very fondly of each other.
I don't even think you need Russell Wilson here. From what I've been told, remember how Melvin Gordon's had interviews where he's very passionate about wanting to be a Bronco? That's 100% true, and I've heard he would be willing to take a little bit of a discount to make that happen.
There you go,
I
Melvin
like the
Bronco.
dude. I want him around.
I like him too. My boys, I have a theory. Joe Ellis already knows who the buyer of the team is. George Paton is consulting with the owner regarding the coaching search. Just a theory, but you never know. Cheers. Yeah, I mean, I agree.
You think they know who it is?
I think they have a pretty darn good idea.
Well, if that's the case, then you don't believe in the auction. Because the auction, it could change. You don't know who's going to be the highest bidder.
It's true, but I just think they have a general idea who's going to come in with the highest bid.
Is it Peyton?
Potentially.
I think they have an idea, but the auction format means that idea can
Anything
get
can
blown
happen,
away.
yeah.
I think they have an idea like where it's trending, but it's still open for somebody to say, I'm going to write a check for $6 billion and just blow the market away, and that's it.
Wouldn't you be down to consult Peyton Manning on anything anyway?
Sure, but that's different than acting as if he's going to be the owner. If you think you know who the owner's going to be, I wish you could be in the interviews. I wish you would just make this process happen in the season.
I agree.
So you could have that guy here now.
All right, guys, we have time for one more here. Coach Tobin, awesome coverage of the coaching search and the ownership details, boys. I'm well informed. I'm guessing once the coach is hired, that's when we'll have a better idea on who the quarterback will be. I'm getting my dad set up to be a member for his birthday. He's retired and wants to listen to the pods and comment. I'm coaching him not to use profanity as he's been a Broncos fan for 7 decades. Soon we will visit the bar together. Much love.
I love it, Coach Tobin. That is so cool.
You can use as much profanity as you want when you come to the bar.
Exactly, and we'll definitely have to give your dad a birthday shout-out when he gets in.
As for when we're going to know about who the quarterback is, it's going to be a while.
Yeah. Or will it? The Broncos or the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford at the end of January last year.
Okay.
If they go veteran quarterback route, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, that could happen soon after a coach is hired. And Aaron Rodgers made it clear about a month ago that he wants to have his future decided very soon after the season's over. His season could be over on Saturday night.
It's very possible, and the Broncos we just got to know who Dan Quinn is in Cabo with, just like Sean McVay and Matt Stafford.
Exactly.
All right, that's gonna wrap it up.
He's not gonna be in Cabo. That's me trying to put together a staff
in Cabo. That's where I'd be putting together my staff. That's gonna wrap it up for us today on the DNVR Broncos podcast. One last shout out to our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online, msudenver.edu/online, where you can scope out all they have to offer. 2 more interviews today. Gonna be in the books here soon. 2 more interviews tomorrow. And then 1 more after that before we can really start to narrow this thing down. Stay with us on the DNVR Broncos podcast all the way through. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.